just, I'm always worried with Google. Okay, it should be working. All right. I'm gonna see if it's. Okay, let me just.
It says we are live.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's working. Okay, cool. So if we get a bunch of complaints on Twitter that it's not working, probably that would mean it's not. But if it is, then it says live on YouTube. Okay, so good. So to anyone who's going back and rewatching this, this is the 10 minutes that we're sitting around waiting in the hopes that YouTube doesn't destroy us. So this is me, Chapter 21 co-director Ariel Kalani, and this is our speaker, Haley Crosby. And yeah. Okay. So we still have technically 9 minutes till the thing starts, so where we can just stare into space, and I will make sure that Twitter and YouTube and everything are going well. Okay. Deck. Hopefully everyone remembers it's Eastern Standard Time.
Are we supposed to be showing up on the YouTube link right now?
We should be showing up. If I were not, then I probably have to fix it up.
Yeah, it still says that we're going to be live in 7 minutes. It doesn't say we're.
All right, then let me go into YouTube and see if it's working.
I just realized, and I was like, hey, the picture probably should have changed.
Yeah, it likes to mess with us. Oh, okay. No, just.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, don't worry. Okay. No upcoming. Oh my god. I'm on a different thing. Okay. Switch account. Chapter 1 events. Ay, ay, ay. All right. So it says we're live now, but of course. Okay, I'm gonna try looking at it on, because maybe the problem is that I'm on it. I'll try looking at it on my phone or something.
Yeah, I just tried doing the same. Sorry.
Okay. In that case, I guess YouTube is messing with us, which is always fun. It's live. Okay.
So we are live on the channel, but it's not at the link that is.
Oh, okay. Then I'll have to change the link. Okay, let me go to share then. Copy. Okay. Let me try that link. Okay, all right. So I had the wrong link before. Let me fix it. Yeah. Oh, YouTube. My arch nemesis, Google products. There's a long history of Google products being mean to me. All right. Okay, tweet. All right. So, okay, so I tweeted out the right link and hopefully.
Oh, was that the wrong that you had on all the promo stuff?
Yeah, I put the wrong link before because YouTube gave me the wrong link initially. Okay. But
Okay.
now I have the right link. I tweeted it out. I will email it to the people I emailed, and then if you want to like retweet stuff to your account too with the correct link, it's on the Chapter 21 account. So yeah, sorry about that. That's YouTube shenanigans. Okay, so we're beginning in 1 minute.
Do you want to like wait until like
People
5 so time to catch up?
Yeah, of course. Well, like we're officially beginning in a minute, but we have a bit of time. Okay. Okay, we have 2 viewers. I hope that's just not the 2 of us, but all right. Okay, so if anyone is viewing, just say something in the chat so that I know you're there. I'll be monitoring the chat.
I'll be talking.
Yes, that's how it'll be going. Okay. All right, so yeah, we might have a bunch of people over on the wrong link. I will go over to the wrong link and post something in the chat there in case there are people there waiting.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah. Okay. But so far, no one is here yet. I will. Oh, yay. Okay, Sophia is here. Someone else is here. Okay, so we got a couple of viewers. Cool. All right, we're going to start at 7:05 just to give a slight window, little cushion of time for anyone who got the wrong link. I'm going to go ahead and make Haley the host so that you can do sharing screen or any other such things. And I will mute and make myself disappear once we officially start. Yeah.
All right, cool.
Okay. So for all in the chat, if you want to like, I don't know, introduce yourself. I mean, we know, oh, hey, Brett's here. That's cool. So, you know, you can tell us your own thoughts on outlining or whatever. And Kira's here too. Hello. Very exciting.
Hi, Brett. I'm going to convert you tonight.
Oh, right. The great plotter versus pantser debate. Or is it about having dark things versus fluffy romance?
Plotting versus pantsing, although I could try to convert her on that, but I doubt it would work.
That will not work, yeah.
I don't think anyone can convert her on that. Sorry, Brett. We're just going to talk about you live on YouTube.
Yeah, we talk about all our attendees because we're all awkward writers. My thoughts on outlining and plots is that I am bad at it. Well, I feel that many can relate, so hopefully this will help.
That's what you're here for.
And Brett says I have started plotting. That's good.
Hey, love to see that.
Yeah, I personally, as the director of Chapter 21 Con, I am terrible at planning things. Well, conferences maybe, but not books so much. Yeah. Okay, so it's 7:05. We have a couple of people in. More people will hopefully come in as we continue, but we will officially start. So just to introduce, this is Haley Crosby, a former attendee of the conference and a known book Twitter author, talented person. And she's going to give a presentation on outlining today. So this is our first online workshop that we're going to continue to hold throughout the year. This one is public and free. In the future, you may have to pay or some such. We're still working that out. But for right now, we will start the workshop, and I'm going to mute myself so that Haley can lead the thing. So go ahead, Haley.
All right. We are going to switch to screen sharing here. It is going to take a second. I'm going to go over here. All right. Can everyone see okay? We're good to go. Pull up my notes. All right. So we are going to talk about outlining tonight. I want to say thank you really quick to the Chapter 21 team for asking me to talk because I could talk about this literally all night. Did my Wi-Fi just go out? Wow. Sharing screen, I have Wi-Fi. Okay, sorry guys. My outline or my Wi-Fi has a little moment every now and again. So we're good. We're good. Okay, so we're talking about outlining. I love to talk about outlining. Hopefully you guys are going to like to listen to me talk about outlining, and we're going to get into it. So first, this is me. I am Haley. A lot of you probably know me from Twitter or Tumblr. I like to hang out on the internet. I am an author, obviously, and I have been for about 10 years now. I am an artist, and I've been doing that since I could hold a crayon. I have 3 big, beautiful dogs who I love more than life itself. And I also have depression and ADHD. That has been a very important detail there on my outlining journey, because depression and ADHD make writing really hard, especially at some points when I was undiagnosed or untreated. I would have issues with ADHD, not being able to remember things, not being able to stay focused even when I really wanted to. And then depression, sometimes you walk away from a project expecting to come back the next day, and then you don't. And you come back 3 weeks later in the middle of a paragraph and say, where was I going with this? So outlining has been really important in my journey to being able to finish projects and really, truly enjoy writing. I have never enjoyed writing as much as I do now that I know how to outline effectively. So for an overview of what we're going to cover, I'm going to talk about what is and is not outlining, why you should outlining basics, my process, how to merge plot models, troubleshooting, deviating, and practicing. I'm going to try not to spend too long on all of these. So first, what outlining is not. I see a lot of misconceptions about outlining, especially in young writer circles. A lot of people say that it is restrictive or stifling to your creativity, or et cetera, et cetera. I've actually had someone tell me that it is brain work, not heart work, and it doesn't count as writing. Kid you not, I was mad for 2 days, but I digress. So outlining is not setting your story in stone. When you sit down and you write an outline, you are not etching into a stone tablet what your story is going to be forever. Sometimes you outline a story with the intention of making one thing and you end up with something totally different. Sometimes your outline is really true to what your final product is. It just depends on what kind of writer you are and what kind of story it is. So you don't have to get it right the first time. It's also not stifling. It is not creatively stifling. I feel like I can prove this with the fact that I've written so much in the last couple of years. It doesn't put you in a box. It doesn't make you feel trapped. At least it shouldn't. Outlining is also not a magic pill. I probably shouldn't say that because I'm here to tell you how it is, but it's kind of not. Outlining isn't for everybody. I'm not going to make people who don't want to outline try to outline. So outlining also doesn't have to be difficult. It can be. Don't get me wrong. It's work. It's as much work as writing is. But it doesn't have to be grueling. When I first started trying to outline, I first tried the snowflake method and it was like pulling teeth. I could not get into it. And that turned me off of outlining for a while. So don't do that. If something's not working for you, just move on. Outlining is also not exclusively for long form fiction. It's not just for professionals. It's not just for published authors. It's not just for people who are really, really neat freaks with their stories like me. You can also use outlines for short stories, screenplays, fan fiction. I don't know, you could probably do it for poetry. I've never tried, but you probably could. Outlining is also for presentations about outlining, outlineception. So now that we've covered that, we're going to talk about what outlining is. This is the Webster's Dictionary definition of an outline. It is a summary of a written work. It is short, it is to the point, and it's usually correct, except for the fact that we are trying to make something that doesn't yet exist. So yeah, you could call it a summary of a written work, but it's not technically right because you haven't written it yet. So for our purposes, we're going to call outlining a blueprint for a work you intend to write. It's not written yet, but you're getting there. You've laid out the intention. Oh, and real quick, I want to say outlining is fun. That's what it is. All right, so why should you outline? Outlining helps you in a lot of different ways. Like I said, it's not for everybody, but it's pretty easy to find a niche within outlining that can help keep you motivated, keep you inspired, and keep you writing at a faster pace. So outlining helps you to organize your thoughts. Going back to the ADHD, my brain is like a bag of cats on steroids. Sometimes it is really bad, and outlining is a really good way for me to organize my thoughts, get the plot out of my brain as fast as possible before I can start losing pieces. On the same vein, it also helps you to not forget ideas. A lot of authors used to say, always keep a notebook on your person so you can write down ideas. These days, we just keep our phones with our notepad apps, but it's the same concept. So, if you don't write something down, you'll forget it. There's always that voice in the back of your head that says, oh, you're not going to forget it. It's important. It's a good idea. You'll forget it. Full stop. Outlining is a really good way to keep those ideas on paper, because if you put it on paper, ideally, you can't lose it. I won't say that I haven't, but you shouldn't be able to. Outlining also helps feel less pressure. The kind of infamous blank page with the blinking cursor is the bane of an author's existence. Trying to figure out with a new project where you're going to start and what you're going to do first is sometimes really hard. And you'll stare at that page and it's a lot of pressure. Sometimes it feels like you have to do it right the first time. You have to do so much at once with the prose and the characters. It's just a lot. And outlining curbs that a lot. It also helps you to make a cleaner first draft. My drafts when I was outlining versus when I wasn't outlining look totally different. There is a lot less uncertainty. There are a lot less dropped plot threads, and the characters develop a lot faster. When you try to pants a book, usually about the first 5 chapters, maybe 3 chapters if you write long ones, are just exploratory writing. You're focusing on world building, you're focusing on trying to make things work, you're focusing on making it all up. And when you're supposed to be introducing a world, it's just hard. You're going to end up scrapping those first 2,000, 5,000, 8,000 words sometimes. And it just isn't the most effective way to do it. I'm all about being effective. It also helps you to have more fun writing your story. When you aren't stressed about forgetting things, and you aren't stressed about doing it right the first time, and you aren't stressed about how you're going to edit this later, it's a lot easier to have fun. Believe it or not. Outlining is also the purest form of the idea that you have in your brain. I don't know if you've ever experienced that kind of euphoria that comes along with a new idea, where it's just manic and you have to get the words on the page and your hands can't move as fast as your brain is moving because you're so excited. That's what outlining is, except you get to do it over the course of a few days. You can't write an 80,000 word draft in a couple days, not if you value your life. So it's a lot easier to get those ideas out, and it is a lot more fun way of doing it. All right, so we're going to talk about the basics of outlining. I'm going to tell you right now that if you've ever taken a literature class or an English class or anything like that, you probably already know about the 3-act structure. That's fine. We're going to talk about it a little bit anyway. So the 3-act structure is very simple. It has Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3, or the beginning, the middle, and the end. The issue with this structure is that sometimes the weight is carried in the middle a lot, because Act 1 is just the setup, Act 2 is the meat of the story, and then Act 3 is supposed to begin or very close to begin at the climax. And it just generates that mushy middle that authors always talk about, and it can be a problem. Obviously, it works very well. People use it every single day. Billions of stories have been made with it. But like everything else, it does have its pros and cons. You also have the 4-act structure. This is my preferred way to write because it just makes more sense to me. You have the 1st act, 2nd act, 3rd act, and 4th act. The way this works is that you divide either the 3rd act or the 2nd act into 2 and focus on the structure of the story a little bit more. It's really good for particularly structure heavy stories or subplot heavy stories. I used it for my crime thriller superhero novel. I can't even put that in a genre, so clearly it's got a lot going on, and it helped a lot in keeping everything straight. It's also very useful because if you have a lot of subplots, you can use Act 3 to resolve your subplots and Act 4 to resolve your main plot, or vice versa. We also have the 5-act structure, also known as Freytag's pyramid. It's also known as the dramatic structure. Shakespeare famously used this. It is still frequently used in screenplays, but it is almost never used in outlining novels. I'm sure you can point to it in some novels recently, but it's probably not intentionally been used. So each dramatic sequence gets its own act. You get the exposition, which is the natural world setting up. The rising action has its own climax, etc. And I do actually like this model because it does set the climax at the middle of the story. And the reason for that is that it was originally meant for dramas and tragedies. So I guarantee you, almost all of Shakespeare's works, the tragedy happens, and then the falling action and the denouement is all the repercussions of the climax and living with the new normal. Now, That's not to say that you can't use this for like a comedy or an action story or anything else, just that that's what it was used for most often. So if you try to do any research on this, you're going to come across a lot of drama and tragedy stuff. Just be forewarned. You can make it your own. You don't have to do what the articles and the books tell you, but just a warning. And then I just want to say really quick, plot lines don't look like this. You've got a line, you've got the other lines, got a couple of words. This isn't what a plot line looks like. I'm sure you've seen the models where it looks like a roller coaster and you just big straight line up and then falling straight down. And it doesn't really look like that either. It's a lot of lines. It is a lot of lines all running together congruently. You have plot, subplot, character 1, character 2, all the way up to character 8 sometimes if you're ambitious. And you have the antagonist's arc, and you have the internal struggle and the external struggle, and it ends up looking more like this. There we go. That was the right slide. So just be aware that's not what they really look like. I also want to tell you there are existing genre-specific plot models, sort of like the act structures, but for specific genres. You can Google romance story outline, and there are a million different websites that will give you roughly the same answer. Plots are formulaic, they just are. It's part of what makes stories entertaining for us because they're comforting and sometimes we can predict them, and it's not supposed to be stressful unless it's a horror movie, okay? So you can do that for just about any genre. I was going to list something, but honestly, there are so many conflicting sources and ideas. I would really just encourage you to do that research for yourself. If you're looking for a place to start, the 20 Master Plots and How to Build Them by Ronald Tobias is a really good start. They have checklists that you should have in each genre and why you should have them, and lists the kind of events that could or should happen in each dramatic sequence of the story. So I'm going to list some tried and true methods of outlining. These are preordained outlines for your outlines, basically. The first one is Blake Snyder's beat sheet, also known as the Save the Cat method. This looks kind of like a spreadsheet or a bullet point list where it's just very brief descriptions of the main emotional or pivotal moments of the story. It's also got pinch points, which are very helpful for some people. It's mostly used in screenwriting because that's what it was originally made to suit. But Save the Cat also has resources for novels. I believe there is a book called Save the Cat Writes a Novel or something like that. I want to put a disclaimer on this to say that I've never used this method, but I know a lot of people have. It works for a lot of people, so I'm throwing it up here. There is Randy Ingermanson's snowflake method. The analogy that he uses on his website, advancedfictionwriting.com, is a polygon structure that you start with a triangle, and then you have 2 triangles, and you have 8 triangles, and eventually all those triangles make a snowflake. And the idea is that the book is the snowflake and your plot points are the triangles. It's kind of a needlessly complicated analogy, but to each their own. This method of outlining is kind of rigid to me. It's also based a lot in your own thinking processes. Like you have to get in your head to make it work. And I'm trying to get thoughts out of my head. So this method isn't super preferable for me. But again, it works for a lot of people. And again, that's on advancedfictionwriting.com is where you can find that. There's also Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey. Again, if you've ever taken a literature class, I'm sure you've heard of this. It was actually devised through his studies of myths, I believe. He was a scholar of folk tales, sort of like Grimm's fairy tales and things like that, and compiled the basic structure of the stories he saw. He kept seeing common themes and common structures, and he was like, well, hey, let's put it on paper. Star Wars: A New Hope, Spider-Man, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, those are all really good examples of the hero's journey. And by Spider-Man, I mean every Spider-Man movie ever made. Wanted to put this up here so that you can see just how comprehensive and kind of simple it is to use. It's not so much a method of outlining as it is a pre-existing blueprint, but it's still really helpful. I actually have a printout of this graphic on my wall in my writing space, just because I like to be able to reference it. If you're stuck with an outline, sometimes it's really helpful to look at what other authors are doing. There is also the sticky note or index card method. This is my preferred method of outlining. You have individual pieces of paper or note cards, etc., and you write down the plot points on each individual card. You can then play solitaire or shuffle them or whatever it is to get them into the order that you like. And the really cool thing about this is that because they're just tiny scraps of paper or note cards or sticky notes, you can move them around very easily. It's very easy to say, well, maybe this shouldn't happen in Act 1 after all. Maybe I should move it to Act 2. And all you do is pick up the card and move it a little bit to the right and put it back down. So for people who cannot make up their mind, like me, this is a very good way to do things. There's also the summary or free writing method. This is the most loosey-goosey of all of these, if you'll pardon the term, because there is no structure. Basically, the idea is that you sit down with an open Word document and you just type. You just put out ideas until you run out of ideas, and then you go back and tweak those ideas. It's basically the same as the sticky note method, except there's a lot more words involved. And in my opinion, when you're writing in a word processor, it's a lot more difficult to move things around. There are also, with these methods, you can apply them to subplots and character arcs individually. You're probably going to want to outline some of those, especially again, if you have a very plot or structure heavy story. Character arcs and subplots are very important. They should absolutely be in your outline. Please do not neglect them. Also, wanted to say there are no rules in outlining. No one is ever going to see your outline. No publisher or editor or beta reader is ever going to see it. Put GIFs in it. Put emojis in it. Put whatever half-baked crazy ass ideas that you want to in it, because there's no consequences. You can change anything at any time, and there is literally zero downside to trying new things. So if one of those methods doesn't work for you, try the next one. If that one kind of works for you, then you try the next one and that one also kind of works for you. Take them apart and put them together. You don't have to use any one of these methods. And as a side note, I can almost guarantee you that you will end up making your own. So I'm going to talk about my process for a minute, and I really mean like a minute. Someone smack me if I talk about this too long. Like I said, depression and ADHD made it very difficult for me to write for a very large portion of my life. I'm glad that I kept at it, but it was sometimes excruciating. So when I came to outlining, I actually was not in a super great place. I felt like all of my writing was just worthless and I couldn't get art to work for me, and just my life in general kind of sucked. So there was only upward to go from there. But I decided that I was going to outline a story that I had previously written. It was a mess. I wrote it when I was 13 or 14 on the family computer in it was called open document, open, it wasn't Word. How about that? And it took me months, and I think it was something like 30,000 words. Like, that was the whole novel. It was 30,000 words. And there were things about it that I still really loved. I was still really sentimental about some of those things, and I thought that there was a story in there worth saving. So I dissected the story, I reread it to my entertainment and sometimes cringing, and I started to outline it. Basically, I started with the summary method and quickly realized that that wasn't working because it just wasn't physical enough for me. I couldn't move things, I couldn't touch things. I couldn't look at all of it at once because, you know, you can only zoom out so much until you can't read it anymore. So I switched to index cards and very, very quickly became obsessed. I have index cards on my wall. I have them on my floor. I have them underneath my iPad right now as I am giving this presentation. I used index cards to outline this presentation. That's how obsessed I am with index cards. Last time I ordered them, I ordered 10,000 on Amazon because I kept running out. So index cards and me are tight. I have them on my wall right now, not in the configuration that's in the middle picture there. That's from last summer. I have a totally different outline now, and I even have more fun toys because I got colored index cards. So now I can color code all my crazy plot lines. So what I do from there when I have my index cards outline and I'm satisfied, I'm not going to change anything else for now. What I do is I begin to transcribe them into a Word document because I do not always write in my room and I cannot carry around 80 index cards. So I transcribe them into a Word document. And as I do so, I expound upon things. I will put in whatever I'm having an idea about. It's kind of like first draft light. My friend Emily and fellow chapter 21 con member will tell you that it is a first draft, but I refuse to believe so. I just refuse. So my outlines end up being really big because sometimes I write entire scenes. Sometimes I'll write a scene description. I'll write entire chunks of dialogue. Sometimes I write things in my outline so detailed that they just get copy pasted into the draft. And it's not usually a lot, it's scraps, but still. My outline for The Art of Fear, which I finished at the beginning of this year, was 50,000 words long. And yes, I know that that's insane. I basically wrote a book and then wrote a book about that book. But it's what works for me. And it didn't take me that long either. I think from start to finish, the whole process took maybe 2 months. And then the really cool thing about that is that I won NaNoWriMo for the first time with that outline. I have been doing NaNoWriMo since I was 15, off and on, and never won until now. I'm 22 for reference there. So last year I won my first NaNoWriMo, and it was like the most natural thing in the world. I had my documents, I had my word goal. I would sit down with my iPad at the end of the day and I would type up my 2,000 words like it was just the most casual thing in the world. So it was like everything changed and the whole world opened up. And then I continued to write that novel until January of this year, where I finished it at 120,000 words, which is by far the longest draft I've ever had, which I used to be a massive underwriter and I used to anguish, like, how am I going to add 20,000 words to this? And now I'm looking at it like, how am I going to take 10,000 words off of this? So RIP me. Just as a fun fact, my outline to draft ratio, my draft ends up being almost exactly 2.75 the amount of words that's in my outline. I've done this calculation on like 3 different things of mine, and it's extremely consistent. I can't explain it. I don't really have a reason for telling you. I just think it's interesting. All right, so I just dumped a ton of information on you. Hopefully you remembered some of it. I don't know if I remember any of it, but that might just be the ADHD talking. We are going to talk about how to implement everything that I just rambled about. All right, so here's our 4-act model. Let's say we want to write a romance. Here's our checklist for a romance story. Lovers meet, lovers separated, lovers overcome, lovers united. Basic romance story. So we're going to put that over our 4-act structure. That's just a little itty bitty baby story, but you already have an idea of what's going to be your inciting incident, what's going to be your conflict, what's going to be your climax, and what is going to be your resolution or denouement. And that's kind of awesome, right? Using a pre-existing plot structure and a pre-existing checklist for how to write a basic romance novel in like 30 seconds, you have the barest bones of a story. So let's say we want to add a character arc. We're going to say the heroine's up for a promotion at work, and it's super important, and it's all she's ever wanted. And she just super inconveniently meets this super hot guy. And then she gets promoted, and it's the best thing that's ever happened to her, but it's also the worst thing that's ever happened to her because she knows that she has no time for love. And then our climax can be after the heroine hits rock bottom in the very middle of the story. She's going to hire an assistant and learn how to delegate and have a work-life balance so that she can go get that hunk. And then she's going to take a lovely vacation to spend the holiday with her lover. And look at that. In about 30 seconds, we have written a Hallmark movie. Everybody go home. Cancel all the Hallmark Christmas movies on TV. We just wrote it. I am convinced that this is how they do it at Hallmark. So if you have the right resources, or if you are just very genre savvy, like a lot of people are, you can do this in about 30 seconds, or you can Google it and do it in maybe 40 seconds. It's really basic, but the story of a story, the real meat of it, the real reason that we love stories so much is the character. So yeah, this is basically Reese Witherspoon in Sweet Home Alabama, but if you make it not Reese Witherspoon in Sweet Home Alabama, if you make it a more sure character with a different love interest, it's a different story altogether. You can't remove character from a story and have the same thing. So my point is, if you can make a checklist or a chart like this, you can write a story. A short story, a fan fiction, a novel, whatever. You can do it. So then from there, let's say we want to add even more conflict. In addition to an external conflict and an internal conflict, let's just throw in a physical antagonist. So they're tied, and then she gets promoted, and the rival has to upstage her, and then her scheme gets found out, and then the rival is demoted, and she can live happily ever after, knowing that her competitor has been squashed for the rest of their life. The bottom half of this is basically Monsters, Inc. I just realized that. Anyway, I'm sorry, I just realized that. So again, we've written a Hallmark movie, and you can just keep doing this. You can add another conflict for the heroine say her mom is really old and she's dying, or for a random example, her family's Christmas tree farm is going to go out of business. You can just keep adding and keep adding and keep adding until it's more complicated and eventually, once again, looks like this. Please, please laugh at my Good Place jokes. If you haven't watched The Good Place, I'm so sorry. That makes no sense to you. But to me, it is so funny. And if you haven't watched The Good Place, you should go do it because it is an excellent example of storytelling. Anyway, that was really easy. It's not always that easy, but it can be. So let's talk about when it's not always that easy. How to troubleshoot your outline. The slides aren't working there. There we go. So let's say you are knee deep in index cards and you're right on top of the climax, but you can't figure out how to get your character there. The first thing I want you to do is stop. Just stop. Walk away for 30 seconds. Come back and read your outline from the beginning. Read it out loud if you have to, and just really take your time and think yourself through the whole thing. Chances are, if you have a third act problem, it's a second act problem. And if you have a second act problem, it's usually a first act problem. If you have a first act problem, you're just screwed. I can't help you. I'm just kidding. Please don't give up. But anyway, usually you can back up and retrace your steps and you'll find something that went wrong or something that could be improved or another layer of drama that could be added and eventually pay off right before the climax. Or your timeline is wrong and you need to add 3 weeks to your story. No joke, I've actually had that happen. So sometimes you just need to take a step back, take a pause, and read what you've already got. Another thing that you're going to have issues with is timelines. It's really difficult to make a timeline for the story that you haven't written yet. If you are trying to write for a story that is only half formed in your mind, how are you supposed to know how long it's gonna take your main character to figure out what they need to do, etc., etc.? So sometimes that's just okay. Sometimes you're gonna write a book and you're just gonna have to fix the timeline in the second draft. If you are really determined to not have timeline issues, I would recommend finishing your outline. Like, be ready to write your book, finish your outline, and then go back to the beginning and add the timeline in. Again, it's work. Outlining is definitely work, but it's less work than trying to redo the timeline when you've already written the book. So it's really just, how much time do you want to save? How lazy do you want to be in the present? And sometimes it's just worth it to not figure out that timeline right now. Character arcs are something else that you might want to outline separately. There are a lot of times where the structure of a story can be floundering, and it's specifically because the character arc isn't developed enough. Like I said, we read or watch or consume stories for characters. We don't do it for the plot for the most part. It's the characters that make a story. So if you are trying to figure out how your heroine is going to get out of this situation you've gotten her into, take a second and ask yourself how well you know her. How well do you know her backstory? How well do you know her timeline in the book? How well do you know how she would even react to the situation you've put her in? Sometimes you have to do a character arc before your plot arc is finished. And that's okay, because you want those to be intertwined. You want them to be inseparable, because that's what makes the story unique. And then, last but not least, if you're having issues with your outline, sometimes you just have to move on. I really recommend, like, if you are stumped for more than a week on an outline problem, just scribble down this is going to happen. I don't know how, but it's going to happen, and then move on. Because it's just how brains work, man. You can't always have the answers immediately. I definitely find issues in my outline between doing the index cards and transcribing it. But the really good thing about that is that when I find those issues, I can switch the index cards places and then I can just move on. It's just easy. It saves time. And if you have any other questions about difficulties with outlinings, this is just what I could think of off the top of my head or what I've dealt with personally. So if you have any other more specific questions, definitely put them in the chat or write them down, because we're going to do questions at the end. I forgot to say that at the beginning, but we're going to do questions at the end. So, deviating from your outline. You have written an outline and you have edited your outline and you have started to write your story and you're 20,000 words in and you did not anticipate liking your Mothman character this much. You did not expect this at all. And now the next scene you're supposed to write is someone getting shot, but you're just in love with the Mothman and you want to write this extra scene with the Mothman. Write the extra scene with the Mothman. If it really bothers you that much that you've deviated from your outline, what you can do is go back and fix it. If it's not that easy, try, combining plot points with your new scene of going to the farmer's market with the Mothman. Somebody's supposed to get shot in the next chapter. If there's nothing that says it can't happen at the farmer's market, just bring the gun to the farmer's market, you know? Sometimes it's pretty easy to just add a scene. So you want to go to the farmer's market with Jerry the Mothman, but it's going to mess up your timeline. You have a very sensitive timeline, and if you offset it by even half a day, you're just going to mess up the whole thing. I'm going to tell you a secret. Your timeline is going to be messed up the first draft anyway. It just is. I keep trying to avoid timeline issues, and I keep not avoiding them. So sometimes it's okay to put it off to the side and say, wow, we're going to have to fix that in the second draft, because that's what the second draft is for. Outlining makes the first draft a lot easier and it makes it a lot cleaner, but it's still just your first draft. You're not going to sell your first draft. You're not always going to put your first draft on AO3 if you're writing fan fiction. What's important is that the story's okay. You know, you have to get out that passion that you have for the story while it's there. Don't let things like the timeline trip you up, because you can fix those later, because that's what the second draft is for. Having issues in your first draft doesn't make you a bad writer. It just makes you a writer. You have to be prepared to fail sometimes. You have to learn how to accept that. And I know that's a lot easier said than done, but if you're new to writing, just be warned. You're going to have to learn how to live with it. Okay, so you are writing your story and you are in the middle of Act 2 and you're thinking about this scene and you're like, oh, that's not supposed to happen until Act 3, but wow, how much better would it fit in here? Okay, first ask yourself how it's going to change things and how it's going to add to the narrative. Or don't. It's a first draft. But what you are going to do is copy the outlined scene. You are going to cut it. You are going to move it to the second act of your outline, and you are going to move on. because the second draft is for working out those continuity errors. The theme here is that you should be having fun. If you aren't willing to change your outline, you're not doing it right. You're not going to get the most out of the experience. You should absolutely be ready to roll with the punches because, like I said at the beginning, outlining isn't writing your story in stone. Unfortunately, you will still make mistakes along the way and you will still have to change things in the middle of drafting. Okay, so that's a lot of information. What the heck am I supposed to do with it now? I'm going to give you homework. That's what you're going to do now. So, a couple of exercises to improve your skills. Outline a story that you love. And by a story that you love, I mean a story that is objectively well written and loved. If you try to do this to Supernatural, I will jump through the computer screen and put you out of your misery because it's just not a helpful exercise to do. What you're looking for is something like Avatar: The Last Airbender, something that's well put together with foreshadowing and character arcs and things like that. So by reverse outlining a story that you love or a story whose storytelling you admire, you're going to learn a lot. I did this with Daredevil season 1 when I was trying to write the antagonist for something. It might have been the Art of Fear. I can't remember. But I really admired the Kingpin and the way that they wrote this very sympathetic and very disgustingly violent villain. And the fact that you still felt for him and everything. So getting off my Daredevil soapbox, I went back and did that, and I learned a lot from the exercise. I actually still have the outline and sometimes look at it like, okay, you can write antagonists. Got to give yourself a pep talk every now and again. On the other hand, you can outline a story that you've already written. If you've already written a novel or a fan fiction or whatever, outline it. You know, just do a basic storyboard kind of thing with it. You can learn a lot about your own writing process and your story. And you can also expose holes in your story. Some people, when doing outlining, don't actually do it until the second draft. They use their first draft to assemble an outline. To me, that's backwards, but that's just how some people's brains work. So outline a story that you've already written. It's a really good tool for revisions, actually. I have found going back and doing revisions on The Art of Fear that having my index card outline is very handy still because, like I said with the timeline, there were things that needed to change. So I changed my outline along with my drafts, but here's my advice to you. Don't ever throw away your original outline. Keep it safe, unchanged, in its own document. Educate yourself on other aspects of narrative storytelling. You cannot break the rules until you know what the rules are. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can, but you won't know you're breaking rules. You won't be able to break them effectively. That's how subverted expectations come about. You have to be able to expectate it. I know that's not a word, but please laugh. So yeah, learning more about your craft. Learning is a never-ending process. You should be prepared to learn. You should be excited to learn because there's a lot of cool things out there, a lot of information at our fingertips these days. Tropes, character archetypes, things like that can be very useful to the outlining process. Like I said, you want those things to be intertwined with your main storyline. And with tropes, they're basically free plot points. A lot of people know tropes only as in fanfiction terms. There's only one bed, etc. And that's valid. Those are tropes. But there are a lot of tropes. There's a lot more beyond what AO3 is familiar with. So tvtropes.org is a really, really fun writing resource. I will frequently go there once I've decided what kind of story I'm telling, and I will look at their genre page for it, and I will just see what I'm doing. How has this already been done before? Has this been done before? Has it been done well? Has it been done recently? Because you can go to their page for superheroes and you can read about every superhero movie or novel or graphic novel or comic, and it'll tell you a lot. It'll tell you what happened in Batman last year or what happened in Iron Man in the 60s. So it's a really useful way both to think of new ideas for what you're writing, to combine stories, to do something unexpected, and just to be genre savvy in what you're writing. Okay, so some additional resources. Scrivener is the bomb. It is a writing software that is very intuitive to use. It's a little intimidating at first. It's got a lot of buttons and bells and whistles, but their tutorial built into the program is also very intuitive. It's nothing like those PowerPoint tutorials where they're like, hey, click some buttons and then make some things. It actually tells you like even the secret features. You can also find a lot of pre-made outlining templates for Scrivener online. You might be able to with Campfire too, but I'm not sure. But with Scrivener, you definitely can. There's thousands of them out there. They also have a built-in corkboard feature. So if you want to use the index card method, but you don't want to have 80 index cards on your bedroom floor, where's your sense of adventure, first of all? And second, you can do it on Scrivener instead. Scrivener is like a little bit on the pricey end when you're comparing it to things like Google Docs, which is free, but it has a lot of cool features. It's, I believe, $60 for desktop, and I know the iOS app is $20, and their iOS app is actually very, very good. I don't know if you guys have used the iOS app for Word, but it sucks. So Scrivener is a really good investment. Campfire is another really popular writing program. It's somewhat similar to Scrivener. I believe it also has a corkboard feature. I haven't used Campfire before, but I know a lot of people who do and really love it. They have some features that Scrivener doesn't. They have, at the very least, they have timeline features, and I'm pretty sure they have like genealogy features, but I might be making that up. But there's a lot of really cool things built into it. So that's definitely worth giving a look. And then Trello. Trello is actually a website. Obviously, it has like an app, but on desktop, it's a website. And it is completely free. It is a virtual corkboard, but not to the caliber of the other two because it's free. It basically only is a virtual corkboard, and it's really good for outlining. It's another really good replacement for physical index cards. "20 Master Plots and How to Build Them" by Ronald Tobias is, I already talked about that book like maybe once or twice. I really, really, really like this book. I keep it on hand when I'm outlining. It literally sits on my desk within arm's reach because it's a really good reference material. It has, as self-explanatory, 20 master plots. It includes quests, adventure stories, romance. I think it has heist stories in it. So it basically has pretty much everything you need. And it has checklists for what should and could be in those genres of story. And it makes it really easy to combine them. So if you want to write a romance, but you also want to write an action, you can just take the checklists or their beats that they recommend hitting and combine them. So it's really easy formulas. Plot Perfect by Paula Munier is a really good reference. It is a Writer's Digest book. I believe it was only edited by Paula Munier, but it's a really good reference. It's very, very structured. It's one of those outlines for your outline. It kind of holds your hand and says, here's what plot is, here's what theme is, here's why these things matter, and here's how to start your story at the very beginning and outline it all the way to the end. So if you're looking for a really comprehensive learning experience, I really recommend that one. I still use it sometimes. You know, if I get stuck with an outline, I'll look it up and be like, all right, what would Paula do next? The Art of Fiction by John Gardner. It is pretty old. Some of it is a little bit pretentious, but there's a lot of gold hidden inside of it. It's not necessarily an outlining resource, but I believe that if you want to be a writer, you should read it. It completely changed how I approach writing fiction and prose especially. So if you ever feel like your prose is lacking a little bit, hit up John Gardner. Suspense, Structure, and Plot by Jane K. Cleland is also a really good one. It's a little bit like the Plot Perfect book, but there's a lot less, it's not like less structure, it's just different. It's a lot more being in your head than writing things down. So one of the things they have you do is like associative writing, where you think of what you want the theme to be and you write down as many words related to it as you can think of. And it's effective, but it's not my style. So again, I like it. I don't really use it that much, but it might work for you. So check it out. And actually, all of these books, I originally got them from the library. So just remember, you don't have to commit to buying them. You can get the Kindle edition. You can get them from the library, hopefully, if your library is not closed right now. A couple of websites. Writer's Digest was the publisher for the 20 Master Plots book. If you go to that link, Writer's Digest /20 Master Plots, there is a PDF of all of the checklists for the master plots. It's not the entire contents of the book. I would not even say that it's the most important contents of the book, but if you're unsure about whether you want to buy it or if you want to keep it as reference if you already have it, that's another really good resource. You can just print it straight off. I actually am going to print it. I didn't know it existed before I started doing research for this, so I'm going to print it and laminate it so that I can have that on hand all the time. This is a Tumblr. This is a Tumblr blog. I kind of hate to like direct you to Tumblr for professional writing advice, but this resource especially has been invaluable to me. It's kind of how I got into the idea that maybe I could outline. They have a special posts page for their thing that they did that was plot a month. And for every day of the month, they guide you through the steps of outlining a book. And they have really specific help pages, like help, I have a plot, but no characters, or help, I have characters, but no plot. And they give you some really good stepping stones for where to go to find your plot and your character and how to proceed when you don't have everything you need. NaNoWriMo obviously is a good resource. That I recommend their forums. The people there are pretty nice. They also have their nano prep stuff. Most of it is focused on how to write a book as fast as possible, because that's what NaNoWriMo is. And a lot of it is focused on how to not be a perfectionist and turn off your inner editor. And a little bit of it is about outlining. It might have changed since I last looked at it a couple years ago, but that's how it was when I last used it. But again, if you're looking to get started, it's a good free place to go. tvtropes.org, we already talked about that a little bit, but I just want to recommend it again because it's fun. The tone of the articles is usually pretty sarcastic. It's kind of just a website where you can laugh at yourself and, you know, it doesn't take itself too seriously. So if you want to learn and do it for free and have fun doing it, TV Tropes. There's also SaveTheCat.com. I know I told you that they have books, and you're probably already aware that they have books, They also have a website. They have beat sheets for existing stories on their website. I think The Lord of the Rings is one of them, where they actually went through the movie and made a beat sheet, like reverse outlining basically, to show you what a beat sheet should be. That's another really good free resource. They do have a template for the Save the Cat outline. You can print that off as a PDF. They also have a writing software. I did not include it in my software resources list because I don't like it. I don't like it. It is really expensive. It's a subscription-based program, and it seems kind of derivative. It feels like you could use Scrivener or Campfire and have the same functions for half the price. I could be wrong, but that's kind of how I feel about it. So, in closing, not everything that works for me will work for you. It's really important to remember as you go into the world of outlining. The world of outlining and writers in general is just a very opinionated place. We all have so many opinions. Even I am guilty of having so many opinions. So just remember to think critically for yourself. And if you see something that you don't agree with, move on. You know, there's a lot of different ways to write stories, and you can make up your own at the end of the day if that's what's going to work for you. Your method of outlining will probably change for each different project. Because no two projects are alike, and you're going to learn as you go, you're probably going to change and tweak your method and tweak how you do things a little bit. That's totally fine. Like I said, if you're not prepared to change a little bit, you need to work on that. I'm talking to myself here. Outlining might not be your thing at all. You know? A lot of people have tried outlining and didn't vibe with it. I tried outlining when I was very young, and I was staunchly anti-outlining for a very long time, but I wasn't doing it right either. So, you know, it might not be your thing. You'll never know until you try it. But if you find that it's not working, do what does work for you. Because if you're not having fun writing, if you're stressing about it, there's no point in doing it. You know, if the love is gone, readers will be able to tell. So make sure that you love what you're doing and how you're doing it. Outlining doesn't have to be boring. It can be really fun. It is my favorite part of the writing process just because of the pure manic energy it gives me. I feel like a crazy mad scientist when I'm sitting on my floor surrounded by 100 index cards and I don't know where anything is and I haven't eaten in a day. I'm not advising that you do that, but that's my happy place. So it doesn't have to be boring. Make it work for you. And very, very last, there is no such thing as wasted time when you're honing your craft. Every mistake that you make now is a mistake you're going to avoid later. Every piece of unfinished fiction is fuel for the fire of the next one. Learning is a never-ending process. You can be writing for your entire life and you will still be learning. And that's okay. That should excite you. You're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. That should excite you because it means you're learning. So don't ever feel like an outline that doesn't work out is wasted time, or a story that you didn't outline and could have been better is wasted time. If you are a pantser and those first 5 chapters always get booted in the second draft, it's not wasted time. It's not. Because every time you sit down to write, you are learning something and you are improving yourself. The more time you spend writing, the better you're going to be at it. So that's it from me. I do want to say thanks again to the Chapter 21 team and also to to my dad who helped me put this together. No, did I? Oh, I'm here. We're good. My dad helped me put this together. I have never used PowerPoint in my life before this because I am so homeschooled. So thank you to my friends and my family who helped me put this together. And that's it. Now we can do questions.
Oh yeah, I'm just unmuting myself so I can facilitate the questions. Also, if that was your first time using PowerPoint, that was amazing. I kept thinking that's a really good PowerPoint, so good job.
Thank you. I literally watched a TED talk on how to make good PowerPoints.
Well, that helps, yeah. I've been monitoring the chat. The most important thing was that Landon says hi.
Landon!
Said that, yeah. That was pretty important.
Very important.
And people love the Good Place references, of course.
Oh, good.
Brett referred to Trello, which you then utilized. Okay. And then Michael showed up to dump a bag of chips on Brett's lap. That's also important. They love Mothman.
You are so valid, Michael.
Yes. Someone asked, what if I only outlined a single episode of Supernatural? Will you still jump through my screen? And Emily responded with, yes, she would.
I will not. If it's a single episode, if you can contain yourself to one single episode, that's fine. But if you try to outline all, 15 seasons? Yes, I will jump through your screen.
That show is a mess.
It's a mess. It's not an example of good writing. I see Emma asked if Scrivener is a subscription. Right. It's not. It is a one-time payment, and they actually update it frequently too. So all of that is free. You pay for it once, and you don't worry about it again.
Yeah. So there's not many questions, mostly just comments. But yeah, if anyone has, there we go. If anyone has questions, so. Emma says, I'm curious if you have a specific tip for someone who is struggling with an ending.
I don't know if you were here for the part where I talked about going back to the beginning, retracing your steps and kind of refreshing your memory on what you've already written and what you might have foreshadowed and then promptly forgot about can be really helpful. If you're having trouble with endings, try looking at endings for books or shows that you love and seeing how they work and why they work and do reverse outlining for that. I used to really struggle with endings too, and I'm going to be totally honest with you. Sometimes it's not an issue with your writing. Sometimes it is an issue with your brain. If your depression and ADHD is unmedicated, good luck finishing anything. I'm very sorry.
That is a generally good writing tip. Sometimes
that's me talking directly to me there.
Yeah. Okay, if anyone has more questions or just comments, you can feel free to say them in the chat.
Oh my gosh. I said Michael's name and he squealed.
They're so good.
I miss those babies. Not that I've ever met Michael, but I miss him anyway. Oh, hi, Gray. Gray was the very, very specific example of Jerry the Mothman. They had that issue during NaNoWriMo this year, and it was too good to pass up.
That's amazing.
Right?
I did not know that was a real example. I was thinking that's a good book. Too bad it's not real, but
no, it is. I absolutely can't wait for them to finish that.
That's amazing.
Sorry, just calling you out on the spot there. So, anything else? Any other questions? Anyone want to? Nothing?
I'll give because there's also a delay with the chat, so sometimes that's an issue. But I'll give 5-ish more minutes for questions and just for awkwardly sitting around, and then we'll wrap up after that. But first, I will be checking on the chat. Okay, I'm trying to think. Do I have any generic questions for outlines? I wrote a bunch of notes.
We could make the PowerPoint available if people wanted to look at it and copy the links and stuff, right?
Yes. Yeah. Email me the PowerPoint. I will send it out.
Okay. Brett, I'm so proud of you.
Yes. Brett asked, aren't you proud of me for outlining? So yes, good job.
And thank you, Emma, for being here. I was kind of worried that no one was going to show up, but I'm glad that everybody did show up.
I was sure people would want to show up. I was worried YouTube was going to make it impossible somehow. So thank you, YouTube gods, for that one.
Yeah, I got kind of halfway through because my iPad is on Do Not Disturb and my phone is on Do Not Disturb. And I was like, if it went down, no one's going to be able to tell me.
Oh, no. Okay.
But
well, luckily the tech worked today. Let's see.
Emma says every time I outline, I just outline the first 2/3 and go, I'll figure the ending out after everything else. Please figure out the ending first. Writing with the ending in mind changes how you think about your whole story. And it changes, again, with that making a cleaner first draft. You can foreshadow your ending the first time if you know what the ending's going to be. Not everybody's able to write like that, but I do. And it is life-changing. And Betsy says, when writing a multi-chapter work, do you think the individual chapters should also be given their own mini outline treatment in addition to the main full story outline? So you absolutely can if you want to. How I do it is I outline in scenes. Each index card is a scene, and if it goes over, I will put another one below it or underneath it. And those are my scenes. And they say there should be like 2 or 3 scenes per chapter, but sometimes a scene is 10,000 words and it's one scene in 2 chapters. So it really just depends. You can try to do that if you like, but for me, it just changes too much in the draft for that to be worth it. I just cut chapters where I feel like it.
Yeah, that's good. Good idea. Just because chapter outlining, I find usually is best once you have everything.
Yes.
And then because then I'll end up with a chapter that's 2 pages and then one that's like 30 pages.
Yeah. Chapter outlining in a second draft is you should absolutely do that. But for a first draft, I don't usually. I actually did do the scheduling. I did. So you're welcome, Sophia. I'm glad you were able to make.
That's a good point. We almost had this in November, but then you were you went to a place.
So I actually put this entire thing together in the last 3 days.
Oh wow, oh, that's good.
I had the outline before I left because I sent that to you, but then like that PowerPoint, I made 90% of those slides the day before yesterday. So
that is very impressive. Okay, let's see if there's more questions in the chat. Mostly just comments, which is great.
I love every single one of you. I love you so much. Emma, you are correct. That is big ADHD energy. I am totally honest with you. If I had gotten back before Monday, I probably still would have put it together in 3 days. This is why I outline. Yeah, that's fair. Please don't do that. I know you're gonna, because you have ADHD, but please don't.
Yeah, like we're all giving advice here, but then making terrible decisions. I mean, that's just the life of mentally ill and writers.
If it works, it works.
Mason says hi too, so there we go.
Hi, Mason!
All the worsts have said hello.
For people who don't know Brett, that's their last name.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't trying to, that wasn't an insult. That was their last name.
You said it, and I kind of like chuckled because I forgot for a second, but their last name is worse. We're not.
Okay.
Emma, I totally feel you on NaNoWriMo. I kind of considered it, and then I was like, no. No, everybody gets a free pass this year.
Yeah, election years are terrible for Nano. Like,
Yeah.
the last year I did Nano was 2015, and then in 2016 I tried again. That no more.
And then we had that completely surreal Friday. Was it Thursday or Friday? Where like
the Destiel Friday, you mean?
Down in
Or-
Georgia, Nevada.
Yeah.
Just absolutely surreal night of being on the internet.
Okay, so let's see. So I think we can probably, if you guys have more questions, feel free to at the Chapter 21 Con account or the Chapter 1 Con account, or
was there anything?
Chapter 1 Con thing. I've been monitoring the Twitter. There have been people responding a bit with some stuff.
If there's no questions, I can later.
There's no questions, just people saying to come in, and then Brett posted a Trello board.
Okay.
So yeah. But yeah, if you have more questions, feel free to post them on Twitter, or in the comments here. I'll forward them over to Haley from the accounts.
Most of you know me directly, so.
Or you can just, and yeah, and thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Haley, so much for doing this.
Thank you so much for coming. I'm so honored that anyone wanted to listen to me talk for an hour.
Oh, it was great.
Giving me a platform to talk for an hour straight could have been the worst decision you ever made, so I'm glad it wasn't.
Well, it worked out well, so I'm glad.
Right.
And yeah, so keep an eye on all the social medias for our upcoming online workshops, and follow Haley on Twitter at Haley Faye Writes, which you can also find linked on our Twitter. And yeah, so we're gonna end it for the evening. I'll check one more time, just some last comments of people talking about the chaos of November. Okay, thank you again, and I'm gonna end the live stream. It might take a second. Okay, where's the live stream thing? Okay, 1 second. Actually, this may take longer than I thought, because I forgot how to end a live stream. Okay.
Oh, it looks like looks dead on Twitter, or on the YouTube, but that could just be me.
Oh. Yeah, no, it's still going. Okay, hello everyone.
We're still
very
here.
Awkward at this. Okay, the more button in the thing. Oh, right, I'm not the host anymore. That's why I can't do it. Okay, click making me host.
I don't.
Just go to participants and then hover over my name and click make host.
There we go. Oh no, that's not what I wanted to do. There we go.
There we go. I am the host. Great.
I know how to use things.
All right. Goodbye again, everyone.